Welcome to Different Gravy, not just another Sheffield Wednesday podcast. I'm one of the hosts, Richard Miller. My co-host, the Mar to my Morrissey, Dr. Luke Gledall. How are you doing today, Luke?
I'm good.
Just to give you a bit of the meaning behind that, it's, I'm racist and you're talented. So there you go.
Isn't it the way around, a part of our relationship on this podcast? I am the one who's recently just received a missive from the EFL to say that they're suing me because I'm going to get cancelled. It's basically what's happening.
Would you say the comments that got you in trouble were more or less racist than Ross Wallace's impression of Def John Chansiri on that that interview with Cy Ferry?
That's something I have seen that I did. We'll get on to that. As it's a bit of a special episode as well, I thought I'd give you an intro as well, Rich. So let's just restart the podcast. So welcome to Different Gravy, not just another Sheffield Wednesday podcast. I'm one of the co-hosts, Luke Gledall, and joining me as ever is my co-host who is taking advantage of this plague to learn how to hack. How has he got on? Well, now he looks like Hugh Jackman in Swordfish and fervently speed hacks into the Star website to unveil their clickbait Wednesday articles. It's Richard Johnny Lee Miller in Hackers.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Did you? Sorry, this is. Did you see the Stars fake play-by-play of a match that didn't happen that was going on Twitter?
No, because it was behind the paywall. At the point I got down to 3 articles, and they're like, you've got to register, and I'm like, I have registered, and I just lost threw my rattle out the pram on that one.
They had Twitter updates, and I believe we beat West Brom 3-2, and there were 2 penalties in time added on, one for each team. Barry Bannon got sent off after West Brom were awarded their penalty. And I just sort of thought, and I think it sort of ended as well, the last comment was something like, an instant classic here. And I was like, well, of course it's a instant classic. You've made it up. Like, this would be a much more like worthwhile real life type exercise if it was boring, because it probably would have been. We probably would have either lost 5-0 or clung on to lose 1-0. Imagining it as a ridiculous 3-2 in the last minute, that's kind of the easiest thing to do. And now and then, did Iron Man turn up and blast their goalkeeper away? Yeah, you're making it up. You can't then call it a classic.
Such astute analysis means that it's Richard Johnny Lee Miller in elementary now, basically. So it's...
I've never seen that show, but I imagine it. I can imagine it, and I don't like what I imagine.
And it's also turning into Richard Johnny Lee Miller in Train Spotting as well, as you'll be taking some heroin and sinking through a carpet somewhere in the floor.
So there's been, actually, weirdly, for a week now or 2 weeks without football, we have actually got some breaking bits and pieces to talk about. So I feel like it's time to introduce our segment here.
Breaking hoo-hoos.
So yeah, fair few bits and pieces, and one of them sort of broke as we were on the Love Sport radio sort of phone in on Friday night. We had this news that the charges against the individuals at the club from the EFL had been dropped, which was an interesting sort of bit of timing for things. I'm not saying it was directly related to the fact I was dressing down the EFL, but it's very easy to put 2 and 2 together in this case, isn't it, Luke?
I think so. And Chansiri, DA tried to box me in, cops trying to block me, but somehow he beats those charges like Rocky, as Jay-Z may have said on Izzo. So nothing against Chansiri or John Redgate, who's one of our financial people. Is that correct?
I presume so, yeah.
And Catherine Mier, the since departed lovely Belgian law CEO who's gone back to Belgium to work there.
Well, she couldn't go back to anywhere else, could she? But that, I don't know what that means.
Different gravy, the slight undertones of racism coming through the gravy that we do every week, basically.
But it felt like good news. I don't. It's hard to know with this, the sort of, for want of a better word, experts on Twitter were a bit sort of split on whether that said anything about the case that the club is now making, or whether they're sort of, they're either tied together, and the fact that the individual charges have been dropped speaks sort of positively for the club. Some folks sort of said that they're pretty much unrelated, and the pressing on with the charges against the club is the bit that we should be most worried about and focused on. I suppose, we neither of us are experts in this field, but it feels just like a positive thing. If the individuals who have also been charged with running things badly have all presumably been found, either there's not enough evidence, or they've produced enough evidence to sort of have their charges dropped. That feels positive for the club as well. And presumably we're making that it's broadly the same argument we're making in both cases.
Yes, no, I agree with you. I'd say that, Dave Jones did previously say there's no smoke without fire. So surely the two are related, you would think.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, it's not something that exists. It's not like, Mr. Chancery locks up on his way out, of a I presume a Saturday evening. I don't suppose they close the club on a Friday, because Saturday's the big day for a football team. But, he locks up for the weekend, and then the ghost of Sheffield Wednesday starts arranging to sell the training ground and things like that. That's not a thing that happens. The club does not exist apart from the people. It is the people. So, well, yeah, I'm deciding to take it as a broadly positive thing, especially in the middle of, one of the most bizarre weeks that any of us have ever lived through. It felt like a welcome bit of news at the end of a Friday night. So we touched on the Ross Wallace interview.
Yes.
You took it in as well.
I thought this was funny because I came back. I was coming back from, I think this is one of the days I was still allowed to go in and work in the office. Was this Monday that this broke, I think?
Yeah, I think so.
So it was Monday evening, and I came back, and I turned on through my phone network, I have like a thing that allows me to get a 3 hours worth of data. I thought, okay, let's crack into this interview, and then proceeded to basically just skip through most of the interview because it was all about Ross Wallace is growing up, and then his Sunderland and all his kind of sordid places. A little bit about Brian Laws. That was quite interesting.
Yeah.
That was interesting about Laws at it was at Burnley, wasn't it?
Burnley, sorry.
Yes, and how
same colour kit.
Brian Laws couldn't keep control of the kind of characters from the Owen Coyle reign, basically. So that was kind of interesting. I don't know. It was interesting because, I mean, you want to kind of hear these people's views on things, but kind of hearing and listening to maybe a little bit, I've only kind of dipped my toe a little bit into the narrative of what the Wednesday fans have been saying about this interview.
Me too.
So I haven't fully kind of explored the whole depth of this, but I think I've heard someone commentate and say about this that this has kind of upset quite a few Wednesday fans.
Yeah, particularly for anybody that hasn't seen the video, I presume if you're listening to the podcast, you probably consume all things Wednesday. But there might be, the odd person. But this is an interview with sort of fellow. I think he is still a footballer, isn't he, Cy Ferry? I think he's still plying his trade north of the border somewhere. But middling footballer. Middling interviewer. He does these long form kind of hour plus interviews with players. Generally seems to have some prior experience with those players as well. He's bumped a lot through sort of youth teams and things with the players. So the Ross Wallace interview, they grew up it seems sort of cheek and jowl with each other. They had sort of warring neighbourhoods in Dundee, I guess.
It is Dundee, yes.
Yeah.
Dundonians.
He said he's the second best looking Dundonian he'd had on his interview show. But yeah, in this interview, there's a lot of waffle about his youth, and then a good chunk about other clubs. Then he gets to the Sheffield Wednesday portion, and the sort of big revelation is about Dep John Chancery giving team talks to the players. So particularly during the time where Carlos, I think we'd lost sort of 4 or 5 games in a row, which was that period just before Christmas under Carlos in the first season. Chancery was sort of went in to give a kind of pep talk where he talked about his son being upset by the performances and things like that. And I think that's really riled people up, because one of the questions about the chairman is his influence over first team matters. And it felt like a bit of a confirmation of that position. I didn't think the incident that was talked about sounded too sinister just in and of itself. Are you the same mind on that, or do you feel?
I guess the interesting thing was it didn't really, much like we can kind of get onto the second interview that kind of happened as part of news as well, when we kind of push forward a little bit to talk about Chancery's interview.
Yeah.
Not in the Star, done with Dom Howson, who's now at the Yorkshire Live.
Yes.
I believe it is. So we can get on to that. But just the thing that just to kind of spoil that one, which shouldn't be a spoiler for anyone who's listening, because again, you've probably read that as well. I don't think any of us really told us anything that's particularly new, really.
No.
It's interesting to hear his kind of view and what he was kind of saying with things. I didn't think there was anything that was too contentious. So that's what I'm kind of coming back at. I mean, there was the whole, he talked about the Carvajal little thing about his, him pulling that act of,
that was hilarious.
Manager. But the interesting thing was that was heavily rumored at the time that had happened.
Oh, I don't remember it, but I did.
I do remember that happened, that he had kind of almost like a pair of glasses. But I think it was kind of previously made out to be like a bit like your classic school hood,
an apocryphal tale.
The glasses with the nose, the big fake nose, and the mustache.
Yeah.
You put on. It sounded a little bit like that, basically. So I guess that was confirmed, but that was kind of rumored before. So, but it sounded such a strange rumor that it was something that you can't make up. You can make up a telling of a 3-2 victory with 2 penalties in stoppage time over West Bromwich Albion. But you can't make up a story like that. So, it's interesting to hear his view. I don't know. I think I heard some kind of comment, maybe the commentary about the narrative from the fans talking about this, saying this is everything that's wrong with footballers. They're overpaid.
Yeah, I saw that too, yeah.
But the thing is, I think that's kind of fair if you pick a character who, is a bit of a mercenary. I don't really want to besmirch a few players, even though I do regularly besmirch quite a few players on this podcast. From the current regime, who when they leave, you can imagine saying they're a bit of a mercenary, and maybe they don't kind of care. But I also want to say Ross Wallace was someone who was a very good football player, who for 2 of his 3 years, for 2 of his 3 years, we got very good value from him. A little bit disappointed about that 3rd year, but for a free signing, even on kind of good wages, he was someone who really came in and did what we wanted to do.
That mold of player that we were looking for, that first season was essentially grab good, experienced pros and get the last few years of their, them being good. Mm-hmm. And Ross Wallace absolutely delivered on that brief. I think you're right. The 3rd year was pretty disappointing, but then, I don't think the plan was to still be playing Ross Wallace in year 3. The plan was hopefully to get up in year 1 or year 2 and then build a squad for the Premiership. So I don't hold that against Ross Wallace. I don't think I ever saw him sort of not trying. I think he. He always gave whatever he had. It just by the end, his legs had gone, and as a winger, that's one of your main things, really. Yeah, I can see that. They're sort of laughing through losses, but that's another one of those weird things where we occasionally compare football to other workplaces, and he did sort of say, we were playing badly. We were getting bad results and we weren't playing well. And sometimes in offices you go through businesses, you go through hard times or things don't quite go right. But when it's a team approach to something, actually doesn't normally fall to one individual. So something's not quite gone right. Losses in football can be results of such odd things. A deflection can change the whole course of a game. A stray pass, a stray tackle is something that a person has done wrong. But a ball kind of flicking off somebody's shoulder and going past the goalkeeper rather than being an easy save can actually turn the course of a game pretty easily, and it's no fault of anybody in particular. So whether we've lost 4 or 5 in a row, so the whole dressing room should be at each other's throats and not enjoying life, I just find that quite tiresome as a viewpoint. I know footballers are paid more than normal workers, but that doesn't feel like the way that you turn form around, is if everybody's kind of angry and not sharing any camaraderie. Do you know what I mean?
Completely.
I think we hold footballers to odd standards at times, and sometimes it's unhelpful. I think that just sounded like one of those where it's unhelpful, because I don't know why. What would we want to hear that the dressing room was doing? Like somberly, just like mourning the fact that they'd lost 4 games. I think you want them spirits and able to pick things up again.
Exactly. And I remember previously during kind of like that kind of I think it was a comment from kind of the early days of Clinton Morrison at Wednesday when things weren't going well. It said, the dressing room gets quite quiet after a loss.
Yeah.
That's not what you really want.
No.
I don't know. This is the type of thing, and I would probably also say maybe this is the segue to talk about the interviews with Dejwan Chansiri, is I feel like we have a desire to know as much as we want, and more than that. But how much does it ever really help?
Yeah. Well, I've said before, at the risk of sort of sounding, repeating myself, broken record. The reason everybody is as angry as they are, by and large, is the form that we're in. The only real way to fix how. Now, some people have long-term. So I don't want to belittle the experience. Some people have long-term, and I feel justified questions about the direction of the football club. It's something we've talked about as well. But that is not the issue with the kind of majority, the kind of the herd, the noise. The herd has turned against Chansiri at the moment, but in large part that is because what's happening on the football pitch has been so bad, and results are the only way that you kind of shut that noise off. Yeah, and so knowing more, peeking behind the curtain doesn't ever help. There's nothing that could have been said in that interview that would have made like the majority of fans go, oh well, it's all fine then, because it's not fine, because we've lost 5 out of the last 6 games or whatever it is, and we conceded 5 goals in the last one. So there's nothing Chansiri could do to make the form since Christmas Day better than it has been. I kind of good in a way, good on him for sort of fronting up and having the interview. It, as you say, not hugely illuminating, but nice to get a little bit more info. He's a pretty silent presence really in the club compared to previous chairman, for better or worse. We heard a lot more from previous chairman. So two chats with Chansiri, been the tale of the week really, media wise. So do you want to, in terms of a feature for today, do we want to segue into the sort of the project we've been working on this week?
Let's do it, Rich. Do you want to introduce this?
I can do. So me and Luke set ourselves the challenge of seeing if we could do better than Garry Monk over the course of a season with Sheffield Wednesday on Football Manager, and reporting back our results. We've not talked at great length about how we did, but I do know that we both did much worse than Garry Monk did. So I don't know where you want to start, Luke.
Well, I thought it'd be interesting to start with mine, because mine's actually a slightly different kind of bent. The mentality I took with this was to basically see if I could replicate the exact kind of mentality of the management that we faced in this kind of season, and take the same kind of approach, make the same starting lineups if possible, or much like as we would find right now in this kind of epidemic, if you're ordering online from Tesco, what substitutions would they make for the types of fruit you're after that you can't get, or toilet roll? And they're like, well, maybe you could do this newspaper instead. Things like that, basically. So if players weren't fit, or sometimes I did give a few players a few cheeky injections.
Oh.
I'd like to add. So I try to kind of replicate the season as much as possible, just to see whether are they actually doing as well as a computer simulation would kind of make out.
I think as well, we should probably, towards the once we kind of covered how our seasons went, I would like to talk to you about the experience. I'm a person that previous iterations of Championship Manager and Football Manager, I have sunk days and days of my life into. As I've got older, I've increasingly sort of felt removed from the franchise, and I certainly don't play to anywhere near to the.
You would say that you have done some social distancing from yourself and the recent incarnations of Football Manager 2020.
I think the last time I really played seriously was probably sort of 7 or 8 years ago. I think that's since then it's been a kind of a dip in, dip out sort of thing.
Yeah, which for myself, it probably goes back to the days of kind of, I don't know, like 97, 98. I really go back to, because I also like to say, Rich, I kind of like sometimes playing. There's fun having a lot of challenge with a computer or video game, but sometimes there's a lot of fun just a video game, just letting you just be awesome at the game, because it's made me a bit of escapism, which is why I still enjoy playing Pro Evolution Soccer, and why I probably haven't played any Football Manager iterations since I don't know, the early days of Champ Man, where to be good at the game, all you needed was a pulse, basically.
I do think. Oh, now we're sort of talking about it now, aren't we? But I don't know what happened, but it seems like I take it that you almost get penalised for not doing the extra stuff. So when we both did it on the touch version of the game, if you play the full version of the game, there is just so much detail to get into. Setting up training regimes. Team talks, media responsibilities, man management's a huge part of it, motivational speaking and individual chats to players during games and after games and things like that. So it's like, and if you can choose to kind of engage or not engage in those elements, but if you don't engage in them, you're on a one-way track to getting removed from your position as a football manager. So presumably there's a base for the club for the title that's what they are looking for. But I'm exactly of the same. I loved the game when it was essentially what you want to do is make a few tweaks to your team and be rewarded by them then being really good, and it makes you feel like you're clever. It makes you feel like you're a manager.
Exactly.
That's what you want. It's a rewarding experience. What they are offering now in Football Manager is just the opportunity to make yourself really sad. It's sort of unrelentingly sort of miserable and sad, I think.
I think this is the mentality that simulation gets so good and so detailed that eventually I'm just getting to the point where the entire thing just may as well be real time, basically. You may as well just go home after a day of work, fire up Football Manager, and then just look through, I don't know, 2-3 hours of a training session, and then you do your press conference and get the play. That's what it kind of comes down to, right?
Yeah.
That's how. So maybe I don't want to kind of spoil this too much. I know, sorry, we were going to talk about this at the end after talking about our experiences. I think we've kind of front loaded and kind of brought on and basically said to ourselves and the listener, this is how Rich and I feel about Football Manager these days. Anyway.
But it's sad. I mean, it is sad for me because it is something I used to love so much, and it has brought me so much joy through the years.
I think that's just a point for life, Rich, is that me and you used to be a lot more active. We used to be a lot more attractive, more intelligent, and old Father Time has made a mockery of us, and we're still in our mid-30s. So there we go.
Old Father Time has made a mockery of us. That's a lovely sentiment to hit on. Did you take the opportunity to make a character in your image?
I did. I didn't like that piece, but I did it anyway.
My experience with those things is I always end up looking like a grumpy lesbian. In this case, my grumpy lesbian had some blue glasses, which was a bit of a nod towards Carlos turning up as a new man. Here's your new manager. She's mad. Um, I never saw my character ever again in the game. I don't know why I made a person. I picked out a lovely jacket for myself. I had a sort of a kind of aquamarine jacket and some sort of salmon pink trousers. I never saw that man again.
I also like the idea of building a character and then the camera just pans into their eyes and then through their eyes, so now you're inside the head.
Exactly, that's basically.
And then you're just walking around an office or you walk around a training ground where there are no mirrors.
But I don't know. Like, I didn't see myself on the match engine or anything. You know, it wasn't like a player scored a goal and it zoomed into my brilliant character on the sideline clapping. Anyway, that was a fun start. So you were taking the mindset. You're trying to channel.
Yes. So I really wanted to answer the post-match pressers much like the manager at the time, but I think with my touch version I didn't have that capability. I think that might be one in the full-fledged version, not for us, not for people like me and you who like playing on consoles, but yet we still want to get guilted for not putting like 5 hours in preparation in for a game.
Oh, do you know? Sorry, we Football Manager is going to get a bit of a kicking, I think, to be honest. But I hate all the selly. You can buy like a bad lasagna for the opposition team. You can buy a magic sponge for injured players. You can get rid of work permits. I nearly signed a guy called Freddie Friday from Nigeria, but he hadn't played enough international games. One of the options for 99p, you could get rid of work permits. You could get rid of transfer windows if you paid a fee. Awful. I've bought the game. Let me do the things I want to do. Those things are called options. They're not microtransactions. You awful hooves of men. Just, come on. Sorry, that's my impassioned plea. Stop trying to nickel and dime everything I do. It felt like being in Vegas. You can have dinner, but you're going to have to stand in a 2-hour-long queue. Unless you pay us $20 before you even pick your meal. Okay, yeah, I'll have to pay the $20 then, otherwise I won't eat today. Thank you. Sorry. So how did it go? So you were Lee Bullen for...
Would you mind if I just go first and just go through my entire experience? Would that be okay? So I'm calling this the Luke Bull reign.
Lovely.
Started up and Football Manager tells me Sheffield Wednesday, a professional football club with a fierce rivalry with, Leeds United, Sheffield United, and Mansfield Town.
Biggest rivals we got.
Biggest rivals. It might be biggest rivals we eventually get if points deduction and the form doesn't pick up. Anyway. Media prediction of 11th. Difficulties from the off was announced at Chance here. The objective targets and the long-term vision. Also, his English isn't excellent and he wasn't too emotional. So I was kind of questioning how real that was, just maybe just a little bit, allegedly, from what people kind of say. Mm. So interesting enough, in my version, my squad was assembled as in the January transfer window. So I had Wigwam and Trumpy Bum. So I didn't feel this is really harsh because it's like I couldn't play them. So kind of fast forward, even though I was pretending to be Luke Bullen in this one, I had to look like Luke Monk and freeze them out of the game. So maybe that wasn't something that Luke Bullen would do anyway. No. So I thought it was interesting. From the off, I was given the option to look at player contracts and to keep the experience as real as get. I delayed decision on the contracts of all players, included Mozo Debaggio and Jordan Rhodes, who it stated they had a June 2020 contract ending.
Yeah, strange one.
Isn't that strange?
I would love it if they're right, but they're wrong.
I don't know. I wouldn't mind seeing Moses stick around for another year.
But if you could get rid of Jordan Rhodes in the summer, you'd slough off Moses to make that happen, right?
if they were
I would sacrifice Moses Odebajo.
I didn't realise the two walked around the training ground holding each other's hand, living in each other's pockets. Further irony as Tom Lees present the club with a code of conduct. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
My first friendly, Hutchinson was injured for 6 to 7 weeks. bit more reality as Rotherham were after New You. So that kind of led me up to... we didn't have the same kind of first kind of friendly period. I can't remember. I didn't really make much notes about what happened
the
there.
friendlies are kind of random, aren't they? But then the fixtures were in the right order. Is that right?
They were indeed. So Reading, Hutch and Bannon were injured. So I opted for a very Lee Bullen-ish Sam Winnall in centre midfield.
Wow.
It's what he would have done. Lees was injured, so I played Bates. So the game panned out. Fletcher had a disallowed goal early in the game. One thing I want to comment from this was that Joey Pelopessi, remarkably forward-thinking in this game and also for the rest of them. I think just to kind of flash forward ahead, he looked from the simulations, he looked a great player. Did this Joey Pelopessi?
Great guy, yeah.
And remarkably forward-thinking in this game because he made one ball forward. Reading were 1-0 up at half-time. It was a penalty. Burner fouled Mace on the stroke half-time. And then Charlie Adam then scored in stoppage time as well. The match report reported back that Kieran Lee nearly gifted Reading a goal in the 82nd minute, which wasn't something I saw. So first up, lost 2-0 to Reading, as in 22nd position. We got a little bit better in the game against Barnsley. Joey P pinged a Hollywood ball forward for Kadeem Harris to run onto, and first time lash past the Barnsley keeper. Then Fletcher made it 2-0 in the 10th minute with Palmer crossing in for a header at the near post. However, Barnsley made it 2-2 in the 72nd and 88th minutes. That game appearance, Sam Winnall in his centre mid appearance, got a payment bonus of $325,000 for Barnsley.
Wow.
The press reported that Wednesday were the happiest set of supporters, which I thought was a little bit strange. Next up in the League Cup, I played, instead of playing Rotherham, I played Bradford, of which Bradford's Curtis Guthrie banged a screamer in the 78th minutes. And Kadeem Harris had a delicious offside header from a Fox cross, so we lost 1-0 that one.
Oh.
Next up was Millwall. Jake Cooper had an offside goal disallowed. It was a dull 0-0. Turned up to 90th. And then my first win came against Luton. So in 8th minute, Barry Banner penalty. Fletch successfully shows his age by falling over in the box. And that was 1-0. We became 13th. Only other thing from that game, Iorfa had a nice header over the bar.
It took me 7 games. I beat Huddersfield 2-0, and that was my first win. Oh dear.
Just to kind of flash forward.
Yeah,
Harris was criticised on the radio for not being as good as he should be, which I thought was a bit rich. I found out that my scouting team is finding players way out of my league. So
mine did that too. Stupid. What's the point?
Really
Telling me about a £25 million player is good. I know.
So finally, I just want to kind of conclude with just to kind of look at the end of the Bullen time. The QPR game, we can see the penalty, which Westwood tipped wide, which was fantastic. However, then Eze scored for QPR, more poor Wednesday defending, basically Westwood tipping a header onto the post. Oh, and then Westwood tipped a header onto the post at the end of the first half. QPR Grand Hall was sent off for a 2-footed ludge. The thing I want to kind of bring up at this point is, so do we recall just how bananas the Bullen substitutions were during this period?
I do remember, yeah, just wacky nonsense, wasn't it? I do.
Yeah.
It made me laugh. Your win all in centre mid was exactly the sort of thing that was happening on a fairly regular basis. That was good channeling. That was Luke Bullen to a T.
That was Luke Bullen to a T. So I ended up having my makeshift team from the same substitutes. So I was making the same substitutes that they were making as much as possible. I ended up having a 2-3-3-2 DM wide asymmetric formation. So that does really contain some strange Pepe Silvia red string on the board thing, but there is no connection between those players on the pitch through this game other than the players all play for Sheffield Wednesday and the hopeful culprits in trying to save Bullen's job. So to sum up that period, simulation, Bullen did better. It appears I could not beat a bit of bully.
Ah, very good. In your brain then, you had a period of time where, chairs were reshuffled. You gave a press conference to Garry Monk, I presume.
I did not. Well, I guess it was still continuous Luke, but I did become Luke Monk. That was the football.
You feel yourself more coy than before.
I did find that I kept more coy. So basically what I kind of typically found with this, getting onto the Monk reign, I've noted that we had an exceptionally light and injury-prone squad. Like, it really felt very realistic to Wednesday. There were a lot of injuries during my period, even the world of simulation.
Well, it sounded like you started with the same ones as me. So months and months of Lees being out, Hutch being out. I think...
I did have Lees out as well.
Yeah. And Bannon being out as well. Those were all three of those were injured at the start for me as well. So that's obviously kind of built in, I think.
Let's see if I can kind of get through this. Huddersfield, Barry Bannon scored a penalty against Hutch from Fletcher falling over in the box again.
Oh,
so Barry Bannon rolled up his socks, put his unconvincing foot through it, so that was good. Just the nature again I've made that Joey P is a remarkably competent looking footballer in CGI. So that was a 1-0 victory. So that was good. We kind of kick-started that one.
Excellent.
And then Fulham came to town. Mitrovic had an unchallenged header in the 4th minute, 1-0 Fulham. Adam Riccinio himself made a brilliant header from a great cross from Palmer in the 18th minute. Bobby Cordova-Reid, as I believe he's now known, smashed one in to make it 2-1, and then Harris equalised to make it 2-2. So I guess that was a good start. That was 4 points from that.
Pretty good, yeah.
Then we came up as against Borough. And so this one I enjoyed just kind of going full pedal to the metal, making it attacking as possible.
Okay.
And the first goal was as satisfying as anything you will see all season in its simplicity. So Bannon whipped in the corner to the back post, and Nuyu just rose above 2 defenders to nod it into the back post.
Excellent.
That was fantastic, 1-0. Then Liam Palmer, the assist machine, got down the left, put it in for Reach, who volleys it down into the ground, into the left-hand corner of the goal, for a delicious goal that leaves the goalie stood to the spot. 2-0.
Excellent. Just to call back to previous grievances, that Star Live thing had Liam Palmer scoring a goal as well today. Absolute drivel.
Absolutely. Completely unreal.
You might, just, go home. Pack it in. Fairyland. Why didn't we win 10-0? Anyway, sorry, John.
So we won that 1-2-1. Ayala rifled home a goal for Borough of a foot like a traction engine. Hull was a 0-0, 15th in the league. We had some news that Winnall vowed to the press to end his goal drought. So some real cleric-like devotion from Sam Winnall. Just a bit of a spoiler to go ahead of the rest of my reign. He did not score a single goal, Sam Winnall. So it must have been a very frustrating household for Sam Winnall.
How did you do against Leeds?
How did I do against Leeds? Let's kind of go forward. That was a 1-1 draw. Nuyo had a rare stinker against Leeds. So he was actually injured in the 11th minute, had to go off. Harris scored a 40th minute screamer. So Fox launched it forward. Harris basically cut in onto his right and wanged it into the corner. My other note is Bamford was being rubbish as usual, and then Leeds equalised. However, Augustin was trucked in the 85th minute by Hutchinson, and Klitsch stepped up and ploughed the penalty wide. So that was a 1-0 draw with Leeds. Against Hull, Luongo scored an absolute screamer. Luongo sticks his action foot for a blockbuster top corner goal. What a welly from the lad not far from Wellington, New Zealand. And in that game, the game against, I think this was against Wigan, basically, the 82nd minute, Dawson came on, replaced Westwood.
Okay.
So he managed to, from a very simple and safe header, knee the ball into the floor in some strange and disastrous immediate first try at first-time football. Kiefer Moore laps up the stray ball and puts Wigan onto a rare win at Essex. That was bad. Iorfa made his Nigerian debut.
Yeah, that happened in my game too. That's fun.
Interesting. Did you get any support from John Sheridan, the press?
I got more like Pearson, Megson, and Sheridan all basically felt like they were all kind of vying for my job. Fairly early.
That was probably it. Yes, I did have a lot of Megson and kind of batting his eyelashes.
Chipping away at things.
Yeah, exactly.
I also got things like you'd be coming up against, I don't know, you know, say you were coming up against Leeds and they'd like single out the centre-back for Leeds and going, Pearson says they need to find a way around the centre-back. And like, good one, Nige. What an insight you've brought to us. We've got to get past their centre-back to score. Well, that kind of, yeah. If they're going to score goals, they're going to have to put the ball between those white stick things into that net over there, says Pearson. But there was a few of those things as well. But yeah, it was mainly people vying for me. I then had lots of players telling me that they told the press that they were disappointed with how the team was playing. Did you have any of that?
No,
Joey Pelipesi has come into your office to tell you that he's told the press he's disappointed with how the team's underperforming. And then Bannon the next day. It's just Fletcher did it at one point.
Well, I had some. I'll get onto that actually.
Go for it,
So, comedy injury. Odubajo sprained his wrist ligaments. Really taken fans' comments of him being a wanker a bit too much to heart.
Hey, very good.
Massimo Luongo got goal of the month for October. That was good.
Oh, was that the strike against Hull?
That was indeed.
Ah, lovely stuff.
So things were going bad. So this was quite funny. Steve Haslam called for a team meeting. So Steve Haslam, the youth team coach, because I've noticed because the youth manager has a better handle than I have on the situation. But I answered that thing in the most Monk fashion. It was a rip-roaring success.
Oh, so then I actually had that same moment. What was the comment? It was something like, "Oh, you shouldn't have bothered," because nobody seemed any different afterwards. I knew very early on that I was really headed for the door. It was set pretty firmly in stone.
From my experience, I guess, like my conversations with the players, basically, this was everything that seemed to happen. Like, I'm wondering now if the players were just winding me up with this, because it really pissed me off, Rich. Fernando Forestieri basically told the media he has no faith in me as a manager. So my response is say that everyone has to pull together, and we'll improve as a team. And then he said, "Well, I don't think that'll solve anything." Rumors are unfounded that I then replied with, "Well, I don't think that solves anything," in a child's voice. Basically, let me tell you that I had the same conversation with Adam Reach.
Okay.
Then he had the same reaction. Same conversation and reaction from Dominic Iorfa, then Bannon, then Joey Pelopessi, then Stephen Fletcher, then Jordan Rhodes. You know, the only player who actually had that conversation with me and dealt with it well. It's Captain Fox Morgan.
Oh, Captain Fox Morgan. Of course.
He agreed with me at that point. Oh, and then Tom Lee's the last person to have that conversation with me before I was fired. So I've called him an insolent teen knobhead. So I've made the observation, how can we have an aging squad when everyone acts like a teenager? Seriously.
That's a fair point.
We had some rumours of a takeover. So Chansiri, the Wednesday president, rubbish consortium takeover talk. I like him being known as the Wednesday president. El Presidente. And we're kind of going on to the end here. So basically, the dying days of Luke Monkager, football Monkager, up against Birmingham. We managed to win that game 2-1, 2-0, which was fantastic. I went out and really stuck it at Birmingham in true Garry Monk fashion.
Saving your skin for a further few weeks.
Of which we had a brilliant kind of first goal. Bannon splayed it out to Harris, who then whipped it back in. Reach half volleyed at home. That was fantastic. And then finally, my last game of my reign was up against Charlton. And unfortunately, it was the reverse of reality as we lost 3-1. Didn't win 3-1.
Oh.
So consolatory penalty from Barry Bannon. And then I was fired. So there we go.
Interestingly,
Was fired.
Interestingly, I had a sort of, in some ways a remarkably similar run. My touch of sort of instant reality was 3 minutes into the first game of the season, Hutch gave away a pen and got his first yellow. We were just terrible from the off. I followed my assistant's advice on formation, ended up playing basically the same sort of formation we play. You know, two sort of midfielders, two wingers and a lone striker with the back four. Never got any great results from it. Tweaked it, changed it. The results still stayed pretty bad. Interestingly, so we talked about Lee Bullen. Lee Bullen doesn't seem to exist on the game. Your assistant is a random character.
Mm-hmm. So
the first thing I did was get rid of my random character and put a slightly better assistant in place, because I knew I was going to rely on their expertise, you know, for picking teams for me and doing the legwork. I'm very much a Dave Jones sort of manager, you know. I'm on the golf course Monday to Friday. I'll turn up Saturday about 12 o'clock. I'll watch the match. I'll go home again. That's my sort of approach by and large. I wasn't as good as you. I wasn't sort of scrupulously sticking to the players I had available. So I didn't sign anybody and I didn't sell anybody. but I did play the players I had. So Wickham and Fletcher were my kind of rotating first choice strikers. Neither of them got anywhere near scoring goals by and large. They were both terrible. Yeah, it took me 7 games to get my first win. That was on the 15th of September against Huddersfield. We won 2-0. By the 19th of October, I had a game against Cardiff where we were 23rd in the table and they were 22nd, and they called it El Sacico.
I had that again before my game against Leeds because apparently Bielsa wasn't doing so good. And actually, I think after I got fired, I think he was second favourite in the sack race with about 5-1.
Okay.
With the bookies.
Well, I won the first El Sacico. I beat Cardiff 2-0. And then barreled headlong into my next El Sacico. A month later, the game with West Brom on the 23rd of November was also called El Sacico. I lost it, but didn't get sacked, interestingly. I managed to limp on till the game against Birmingham, which I also lost, and then got sacked on the 27th of November. I was frustrated with my first run. I started playing again with giving myself a bit more freedom. So I sold Atty, I sold Winall, I sold Forest.
Who did they go to?
It's a good question. I'll pull up the transfers so I can let you know.
And how much did you get for said players?
Oh,
how many dib-dabs did you get for those combined transfers?
So, let's see. So for Atty, I got 950,000 rising to 1.2 million in sort of stages. Sam Winall, I got 1.7.
And that was 1.2 million Golden Wonder crisps, was it?
Yeah. Sam Winall, he went to Rapid Vienna, by the way. Sam Winall went to QPR for 1.7 million.
Wow, that is good business.
No, I felt good on that one, definitely. Forestieri went to Derby for 3.5 million, and I loaned Jordan Rhodes out to Aberdeen for the season. So it gave me a little bit of money to play with, thankfully. So I signed Alan Hutton, Ibrahim Cisse, kind of defensive midfielder.
You're really winding back the rumour mill years.
Exactly, in a way, yeah, definitely.
Bringing in Hudson.
Yeah, I also signed Ben Marshall, who was a free transfer. I signed a new centre-back called Alexander Milosevic, a Swedish centre-back. I got a new goalkeeper on loan because I decided that was one of the problems, was neither of the goalkeepers were any good because every shot basically went in my first run. So I got a guy called Nyland from Aston Villa. I signed Isaac Success on loan from Watford, and I also got somebody from Wolves. I was panicking. I felt I needed another striker because I basically only had Winall and Fletcher by the end of my business dealings. So I signed a guy called Campagna from Wolves on loan as well. So my second time round, much more favourable results. So, won the first game against Reading 4-3. Drew with Barnsley. Lost to Stoke in the Cup, but beat Millwall and Luton. And I was in contention for manager of the month after beating QPR, but I lost to Preston. So I think that sort of did for me in the manager of the month rankings. I've only played up to the end of September, so September hasn't gone as well. I lost to Huddersfield and Fulham, but I beat Middlesbrough. But I'm sitting just outside the playoffs, so given the free hand that Sheffield Wednesday managers so rarely get, I've turned in better results than those constricted by the regime as it stands. But it's been an interesting experience dipping into it. I'll probably play until I get sacked again, and be interesting to see if I can make it to Christmas. That would feel like an achievement. It's interesting to see what they make of our team a little bit. Not much is what I would say.
Rich and I, football manager turkeys, making it to Christmas as opposed to US Thanksgiving, basically.
Yeah, I barely made Thanksgiving. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so I've slipped it up with Hutton when I signed him. Wanted a clause where he would be the vice captain. He is not in any way suited to being vice captain. He doesn't have any of the the qualities one would look for in a vice captain. So I picked the players that were best suited for it, which was Hutch and Milosevic. Hutch was captain, Milosevic was vice captain. He was not happy about that, and neither was Bannon, who was the vice captain before I promised it to Hutton. So, it's fun to sort of deal with those things. But yeah, it was a weird experience jumping back into Football Manager. It's been a thing that's given me such joy. I actually think the mobile version it still has that thing of essentially you kind of sign a few free players and you can kind of win the league, which is what you want.
Yes, exactly.
Really?
Well, we do, because the thing that really confounded this whole experience for me, Rich, was that, the world of fantasy, digital, simulated football management was more depressing for me than the reality that's been going on. So, yeah. Any hope that we can get, I think after this conversation tonight, I'm going to fire up Pro Evolution Soccer and go score 5 goals with a 37-year-old Steve Fletcher.
Please do. Do it for all of us. It was an interesting experience diving back. Definitely. I'm gonna persevere. I might update you next week on how things have gone. But it does feel like, as a kind of series, and maybe they've done this on purpose. As I say, it's a popular game still, so there's a core audience that are responding to what they do. But for gamers like me and people in my kind of position, I feel left behind, because it's like the series has decided what people want is that hyper realism, minute detail, tinkering around the edges sort of thing, rather than essentially a kind of fairy story where your team gets to be good because you pay attention and make them good by being sort of slightly more clever than the opposition, who aren't the opposition players are not that clever. I also think the match engine is rubbish, and it's always been rubbish. It's still awful. Actua soccer level stuff. I don't know what the point of it is. I'd rather just have the text again. But again, you feel like you're punished because you're not picking things up from watching the action. But yeah, there you go. Football Manager. Bosh. Knocked it on the head.
Oh dear. One thing I do want to say from my Football Manager experiment was basically my top assister with 5 assists was Liam Palmer.
Wow.
And he's looking like a real Andy Robertson in Football Manager. Really been downing his Iron Brew flavoured Powerade and done a few lines of the Flower of Scotland as well.
Well, obviously his counterpart in the Scotland team, he's inspired.
There you go. But he's very mobile. He's looking very good in CGI. Him and Joey Pelopessi, wonderful.
Pelopessi is oddly good on the game. He scored an absolute belter of a goal for me as well in one of the games. He also scored one that was like a cross that bounced off his face. Just like it wasn't an angle for a cross, it looked like a shot. He kind of got in the way of it, but it went in
off his face.
Yes, off his face, off his lovely little face. Yeah, so there you go. It's been a strange week. I think we're going to have a succession of strange weeks. But fun to have a little project in the Football Manager there. One idea we've sort of had is to pick out a classic game maybe at some point and sort of all of us watch the YouTube video ahead of time and break it down in similar sort of detail to how we do with the games as they come in the modern age. That might be quite fun to do. And interestingly, the BBC is showing, at least in part, the game against Derby at the baseball ground from the '93 FA Cup run. That's being shown on the BBC tomorrow. So it's weird. It's like the BBC's had the same sort of idea as us. Well, there's no new football, so can we just talk about old football? Yeah, we could talk about some old football.
Sure.
I had a video of that, the Road to Wembley '93, which I watched an awful lot. I don't think they showed any of the final. I think it finished at the semi-final, which is the best way. Well, you kind of don't have any of the ignominy of defeat. You just get all the wonderful road to getting there.
You've won the road.
Yeah, and we won at Wembley. You know,
We did win
the-
at Wembley, but it wasn't the final.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved that video. I watched it so much. I also loved. I had a 1990 England 1990 World Cup video, which, as a Scotsman, my dad absolutely hated that we had in the house. But for me, it was just all the Wednesday players that I loved. You know, we had like Des Walker and Carlton Palmer and Chris Waddle. They were all playing for England. It's really good.
England.
Chris Woods as well. Would it have been at that time? I think it would have been.
Probably would have been Chris Woods. Yeah.
Yeah, what a treat. Oh, anyway, so we'll have a think. If we decide to go down that route of breaking down a classic match, we'll try and shout it from as high of a rooftop as we have to let folks know ahead of time. But other than that, I think we're probably done for the day, eh, Luke?
I think that's it. Yeah, that's a good That's a good fill of Football Manager. Enough for Football Manager that I think I'm satiated and want no more.
That is just enough Football Manager. Yum, yum. I couldn't take another slice. Well, look after yourself, folks. Do what you can. Keep sane. And we'll talk again. Cheerio, Luke.
Awesome. Have a good one, Rich. See ya. Bye.